never thought that one phrase could shatter my world and simultaneously open the path to the sweetest revenge of my life. But that is precisely what happened on that sunny day when my son, Manuel, uttered the words that changed everything forever. My name is Adriana Romera, and until that day, I considered myself a fortunate woman. At 38 years old, I owned a successful chain of jewelry stores inherited from my parents. My home in the prestigious San Isidro district was worth over $1 million, and my only son, Manuel, attended the best private school in Buenos Aires. On the surface, everything appeared perfect. My husband, Alfonso, worked as a financial advisor at a major corporation. We had met 15 years ago at a charity event, where he charmed me with his wit and elegance. He was 3 years older than me, a tall and attractive man with penetrating brown eyes. Our wedding was the event of the year in Buenos Aires high society. But there was one shadow in our marriage that had haunted me all these years. When I gave birth to Manuel 14 years ago, something went wrong during the delivery. I remember feeling a strange emptiness, as if a part of me had vanished forever. The doctor said that this was normal after a difficult birth, but my maternal instinct told me otherwise. For many years, I would wake up at night with the feeling that there was another child somewhere, one that I had lost. Alfonso always reassured me, saying that it was postpartum depression and that we had a wonderful, healthy son. He even insisted that I undergo therapy to get rid of these irrational thoughts. Manuel grew up as a typical child from a wealthy family. He had all the toys he could wish for, private tutors, and opportunities to travel the world. But sometimes, I noticed a sadness in his eyes that I couldn't explain. When I asked him about it, he would simply shrug and say that everything was fine. Our family life seemed stable, but beneath the surface, there were cracks that I didn't notice at the time. Alfonso often stayed late at work, and his sister, Mercedes, became a frequent visitor to our home. She was the only relative of Alfonso's that I knew, as his parents had died before our wedding. Mercedes was an attractive woman my age with long dark hair and piercing green eyes. She worked in real estate and always wore expensive clothes. At first, I was glad that Alfonso had family, but over time, I began to notice strange things about their relationship. They often whispered to each other and would fall silent when I entered the room. My first suspicions crept into my mind about 2 years ago when I accidentally overheard a phone conversation of Alfonso's. He was talking to someone about money and mentioned Mercedes's name. When I asked him about it, he said that he was simply helping his sister with financial problems. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. Then, strange disappearances of money from our joint accounts began. At first, it was small sums, $500 to $1,000. Alfonso explained it away as investments or unexpected expenses, but gradually the amounts became larger. Over the past year, more than $50,000 had disappeared. When I started asking questions, Alfonso became irritable. He told me that I was too controlling with the finances and that, as his wife, I should trust his decisions. His tone became increasingly cold, and our conversations turned into arguments. Meanwhile, Mercedes started appearing at our house even more often. She would come when I wasn't home. Manuel told me that she would talk to Alfonso for a long time in his study behind closed doors. When I tried to join their conversations, the atmosphere became tense. One day, I found a note in Alfonso's jacket pocket with an address in a poor area of the city. When I asked him about it, he said that it was work-related and that I didn't need to worry about it. His answer was too quick, too defensive. Last year, the situation worsened. Alfonso began to be frequently absent on weekends, saying that he had important meetings with clients. Mercedes also became unavailable on those same days. When I called her, she didn't answer or answered with a delay, always with some unconvincing explanations. I began to feel that my family was falling apart, but I didn't know how to stop it. Manuel also noticed the changes in his father's behavior. He asked me several times why his father had become so strange. I didn't know what to tell him. The final straw was the day I saw Alfonso and Mercedes together at a restaurant in the center of the city. I was there on business and happened to notice them through the window. They were sitting very close to each other, and Mercedes put her hand on his hand. That was not the behavior of a brother and sister. I didn't make a scene then, but in the evening I asked Alfonso about his day. He lied to me straight to my face, saying that he had spent the entire day in the office in important negotiations. At that moment, I realized that my husband was lying to me, but I didn't yet know how deep this betrayal went. Everything changed on Saturday, October 15th. Manuel asked for permission to go to the city center with his friends to see a new movie. I agreed, giving him money for a taxi and lunch. He was supposed to be back by 6 p.m. At 5:30, Manuel called me. His voice sounded excited and puzzled. He told me that he had met a boy on the street who looked exactly like him, but was dressed in old, torn clothes and looked very thin. I thought it was a child's fantasy and told him to hurry home, but Manuel insisted. He said that the boy really looked like him, as if they were twins. He asked for permission to bring him home because the boy said that he had no parents and lived on the street. My heart clenched with pity, and I agreed. When the taxi stopped in front of our house, I went out to meet Manuel. What I saw shocked me to the core. Next to my son stood another boy who was his exact copy. They were the same height, with the same curly, dark hair, the same brown eyes, even with the same mole on their left cheek. The only difference was in their clothes and overall condition. Manuel was dressed in expensive, brand-name clothes and looked healthy and well-groomed. The other boy wore an old, torn t-shirt and jeans that were clearly too big for him. He was noticeably thinner and had that haggard look that children living in poverty have. Manuel excitedly said to me, "Mom, he's my brother." Those words struck me like lightning. I felt the world around me begin to spin, and I had to grab the door frame to keep from falling. The other boy looked at me with an expression of hope and fear in his eyes. He quietly said, "My name is Pablo. Manuel said that you might be my mom." His voice was exactly the same as Manuel's, the same intonation, the same timbre. At that moment, all my suppressed maternal instincts flared up with new force. I absolutely knew, that this boy was my son. The son I had been searching for in my dreams all these years, the child whose loss I had felt in every cell of my body. But at the same time, my mind refused to accept this reality. How was this possible? Where had this boy been all these years? Why had Alfonso never told me about a second child? Questions swirled in my head, but I couldn't find any answers. The first few days after meeting Pablo passed as if in a fog. I took him into my home because I couldn't do otherwise. Every time I looked at him, my heart broke with pain and joy at the same time. Pain from the realization that I had lost 14 years of his life. Joy from the fact that he was finally home. Alfonso reacted to Pablo's appearance very strangely. When he saw the boy, his face turned pale, and he stood silently for a few seconds, clearly shocked. Then he quickly composed himself and said that it was just an amazing coincidence, that there are many people in the world who look alike. He insisted that we should take Pablo to an orphanage or contact social services. He said that we couldn't just take someone else's child, that it could create problems for us with the law, but I categorically refused. Something deep inside me screamed that this boy belonged to me. Manuel was thrilled to have a brother. They became friends instantly, as if they had known each other their whole lives. They played the same games, laughed at the same jokes, even slept in the same positions. Watching them, I became more and more convinced that they were indeed brothers. Pablo told us his story in pieces. He grew up in an orphanage in a poor area of the city, but a few months ago he ran away from there because of abuse. Since then, he had been living on the streets, begging and stealing food to survive. He knew nothing about his parents, only that he had been left at the orphanage when he was a baby. I decided to conduct a DNA test to confirm my suspicions. Secretly from Alfonso, I took hair samples from myself, Manuel, and Pablo and sent them to a private laboratory. Waiting for the results was agonizing. Every night, I lay awake, thinking about the possible consequences. When the results came back a week later, my worst fears were confirmed. Pablo was indeed my son, Manuel's twin. The probability of maternity was 99.9%. At that moment, I realized that I had been the victim of a monstrous deception. I confronted Alfonso with the results of the analysis. At first, he tried to deny everything, saying that the tests might be inaccurate, But when I threatened to go to the police, he finally broke down. What he told me exceeded my worst expectations. 14 years ago, when I gave birth to twins, Alfonso and Mercedes devised a plan to sell one of the children to a childless couple for $50,000. They bribed a doctor and a nurse to tell me that only one child had been born. Mercedes wasn't even his sister. She had been his lover all these years. Learning the truth, I felt a rage that I had never felt before. These people had stolen 14 years of my son's life from me. They had made me believe that I was going crazy when my maternal instinct was telling me the truth. They enriched themselves by selling my child, and then for years they lived in my house, taking advantage of my kindness and trust. My first impulse was to immediately go to the police, but then I realized that a simple arrest was not enough. These people had to face a punishment that matched their crime. They had to lose everything, as I had lost. I began to carefully plan my revenge. First, I hired a private investigator named Ricardo Vargas, a former police officer with an excellent reputation. I instructed him to gather all possible information about the activities of Alfonso and Mercedes over the past 15 years. Ricardo worked quickly and efficiently. After 2 weeks, he provided me with a detailed report that revealed the extent of their criminal activity. It turned out that the sale of Pablo was not an isolated incident. Over the years, they had been involved in the trafficking of 5 more children, earning more than $300,000 from it. Mercedes used her connections in real estate to launder money, buying and selling houses under fictitious names. Alfonso used his position as a financial advisor to create fraudulent investment schemes. Part of the money stolen from me went to finance their criminal activities. I also learned that the couple who bought Pablo 14 years ago had died in a car accident 5 years ago. After their death, Pablo entered the foster care system, where he was mistreated. He ran away from there just 3 months before Manuel found him on the street. With all this information, I developed a plan that was not only to punish the guilty but also to ensure justice for all the affected children. I decided to act methodically, striking where it would cause maximum damage. In parallel with the investigation, I began preparing the documents for divorce and filing lawsuits for damages. I hired the best lawyers in the city and made sure that all my assets were protected from Alfonso's attempts to access them. I also contacted a journalist named Carlos Mendez, who specialized in investigating corruption and organized crime. I understood that public condemnation would be no less important than legal punishment. These people had to become outcasts in the society they had deceived for so long. My plan for revenge began on Monday morning when Alfonso left for work, unaware of what awaited him. The first blow was the filing of divorce papers directly at his office. The courier delivered them during an important meeting with clients, which maximally humiliated him in front of his colleagues. At the same time, I froze all our joint bank accounts and credit cards. Alfonso learned about this when he tried to pay for lunch and his card was declined. I also revoked his access to our family home, changing all the locks and installing a security system. The second blow was the filing of a police report about child theft and fraud. I provided all the evidence gathered by Ricardo, including recordings of phone conversations, financial documents, and witness testimony. By noon that same day, an arrest warrant had been issued for Alfonso and Mercedes. Alfonso was arrested right in his office, in front of all the employees and clients. A video of his arrest was taken by someone from among the witnesses and quickly spread on social media. Mercedes was arrested at her real estate office an hour later. The third blow was the publication of an investigative article by Carlos Mendez in the city's largest newspaper. The article, entitled "Child Traffickers Among the Elite," detailed the criminal activities of Alfonso and Mercedes. The article included photos of all the victims, including Pablo, and told the story of each stolen child. The public's reaction was immediate and fierce. Social media exploded with outrage. People demanded the maximum punishment for the criminals. The company where Alfonso worked immediately fired him and issued a statement distancing itself from his actions. The fourth blow was the filing of civil lawsuits against all accomplices in the crime. I demanded compensation not only for the stolen money but also for the moral damage caused to me and my children. The amount of the lawsuits exceeded $2 million. The doctor and nurse who participated in the deception 14 years ago were also arrested. It turned out that they had continued to participate in child trafficking all these years. Their medical licenses were revoked, and the reputation of the hospital where they worked was seriously damaged. The fifth blow was the disclosure of the entire financial laundering scheme. Authorities froze all the assets of Alfonso and Mercedes, including real estate, cars, and bank accounts. It turned out that over the years of criminal activity, they had accumulated assets worth more than $1.5 million. The investigation also led to the discovery of other victims of their activities. The police were able to find 3 of the 5 children who had been sold by the couple. 2 of them were reunited with their biological families, and the third, whose parents had died, was adopted by a loving family. The sixth and sweetest blow was the moment when Alfonso and Mercedes realized that their plan to evade justice had failed. They tried to make a deal with the prosecutor's office, offering information about other participants in child trafficking in exchange for a reduced sentence. But the evidence against them was so overwhelming that the prosecutor's office rejected their offer. The trial lasted 6 months and became one of the most high-profile cases in the modern history of our city. Every day of the proceedings, the courtroom was filled with journalists and social activists. I attended every hearing, holding the hands of Manuel and Pablo. During the trial, even more shocking details emerged. It turned out that Alfonso had married me not out of love, but because he knew about my wealth. He had planned to divorce me after the birth of the children, but decided to stay when he realized that he could continue to enrich himself at my expense. Mercedes had never been his sister. They had been lovers even before our wedding, and she had helped him devise the plan to win my trust. The fake documents confirming her relationship to Alfonso were made by a corrupt official who also stood trial. The most painful moment for me was realizing that all our happy moments had been a lie. Every kiss, every "I love you," every family celebration, all of it was part of their deception. Alfonso even recorded our intimate conversations to use information against me if necessary. But there was also a positive side. The process revealed the incredible power of maternal love and intuition. Expert psychologists confirmed that my constant feelings of losing a second child were a manifestation of a deep emotional connection between a mother and a child, which cannot be broken even by deception. The sentence was severe and just. Alfonso received 25 years in prison for child trafficking, fraud, and money laundering. Mercedes received 20 years for complicity in the same crimes. The doctor received 15 years, and the nurse 10 years, for participation in child trafficking. All their assets were confiscated and transferred to a fund to help victims of human trafficking. Part of the money went to compensate the families affected by their actions. The remainder was used to improve the child protection system in our region. Today, 1 year after the start of this story, I can say that revenge was sweet, but reuniting with Pablo was even sweeter. My son quickly adapted to his new life. He went to the same school as Manuel, received the best medical care and psychological support. The twins became inseparable. They sleep in the same room, share everything, and protect each other from any problems. Watching them, I realized that they always felt a connection to each other, even while separated. Pablo often tells me that in his dreams, he saw a boy who looked like him and a house where it was warm and safe. I changed the name of my company to Jewels for Two, in honor of my sons. The business is thriving even more than before, perhaps because customers see in my story an example of how maternal love can overcome any obstacle. The boys and I often visit orphanages and shelters, telling the children that everyone has a family that loves them, even if they haven't found each other yet. Pablo has become a real inspiration to other children, showing them that even in the darkest circumstances, there is hope. I also founded the Maternal Instinct Foundation, which helps parents find stolen or lost children. Over the past year, we have helped reunite 15 families. Each such story reminds me that maternal love truly knows no bounds. As for Alfonso and Mercedes, I no longer waste my thoughts on them. They got what they deserved and now have to live with the consequences of their actions. Sometimes, I receive letters from Alfonso from prison, where he asks for forgiveness and begs to be allowed to see Manuel and Pablo. These letters go straight into the trash. My sons know the truth about their father, but they also know that they are loved. Manuel sometimes asks me, "Aren't you angry with me for bringing Pablo home that day?" I always answer him that he did the right and bravest thing in his life. Pablo often thanks me for taking him home, despite all the difficulties. He says that he always knew that he would find his family and that his faith never left him, even in the most difficult moments on the street. This story has taught me a lot about the power of maternal intuition and that justice sometimes comes in the most unexpected ways. When Manuel uttered those words, "Mother, he's my brother," he didn't just find his twin. He set in motion a chain of events that restored justice and destroyed years of lies and betrayal. Today, when I watch my sons playing in the garden of our home, I realize that revenge was only a means to achieve the true goal, the reunification of our family. Alfonso and Mercedes thought that they were smarter than everyone else, that they could deceive a mother's heart and hide the truth forever, but they underestimated the power of love and instinct, which cannot be suppressed by any deception. Their punishment was not just revenge. It was justice for all the children they stole, for all the families they destroyed, and for all the parents who suffered for years not knowing the fate of their children. Every day they spend in prison reminds them that crimes against children and families do not go unpunished. My boys are growing up happy and healthy, surrounded by love and an understanding that they will never be separated again. They know their story, they know what we had to go through to be together, and they appreciate every day of our life together. Sometimes people ask me, "Do you regret treating Alfonso and Mercedes so harshly?" My answer is always the same. I only regret not finding out the truth sooner. Every day that Pablo spent on the street, every night when he went to bed hungry and scared, every moment of suffering he experienced, all of that lies on their conscience. Maternal instinct never fails. For 14 years, I felt that a part of me was missing, and I was right. For 14 years, I struggled with a feeling of loss, which others called irrational, but which turned out to be the most real thing in my life. When I saw Pablo that first day, I instantly recognized him because the bond between mother and child is stronger than any lie. This story has also shown me that children have an amazing ability to sense the truth. Manuel didn't hesitate for a second when he saw Pablo. He immediately understood that this was his brother and brought him home. His childish sincerity and trust in his own feelings turned out to be wiser than all adult reasoning. Today, our family has become an example for many others. We receive letters from parents all over the world who tell us about their searches for missing children. Our story gives them hope and strength to continue the fight. We have proven that even after many years, even when everything seems hopeless, families can reunite. The Maternal Instinct Foundation has become my new mission in life. We not only help find missing children, but also work to change legislation to make child trafficking more difficult and punishable. We cooperate with the police, social services, and international organizations for the protection of children's rights. Every child we help reunite with their family reminds me of Pablo that first day. The fear and hope in their eyes, the desire to believe that they have finally found a home, and the joy of the parents who hold in their arms the child they never stopped looking for. Pablo often helps me in the work of the foundation. He tells his story to other children, showing them that there is always hope. His words have special power because he has gone through the same thing as them. When he tells them that they will find their family, they believe him because he is living proof that miracles happen. Manuel is also actively involved in our work. He helps children adapt to their new lives, shares his toys and clothes with them, shows them what it means to have a brother. His kindness and generosity are a direct contrast to the selfishness and cruelty of his biological father. As for the future, I know that my sons will grow up to be strong and kind people. They are already showing signs that they will become protectors of the weak and fighters for justice. Their story has made them wise beyond their years, but it hasn't deprived them of childish joy and innocence. We are planning a trip to Europe this summer, the first real family trip for the three of us. The boys are excited about the upcoming trip, and I rejoice in being able to give them experiences that Pablo was denied all these years. Every new experience, every moment of happiness helps heal the wounds of the past. Alfonso recently attempted to appeal his sentence, claiming that the evidence against him was obtained illegally. The appeal was rejected by the higher court. Mercedes also tried to get early release, citing good behavior in prison. Her request was also denied. I am glad that justice continues to work and that these people will not be able to harm other families. Every day they spend in prison is a day when a child is safe from their criminal plans. Sometimes I think about how our lives would have turned out if Manuel hadn't met Pablo that day. The deception would probably have continued for years. Alfonso and Mercedes would have continued to steal children and destroy families, and Pablo might not have survived on the streets of the big city. But fate decided otherwise. Two brothers found each other in a city of millions, against all odds. A mother's heart recognized her child at first sight, and justice triumphed over lies and betrayal. This story changed not only our family, but also many people around us. Our friends say that they have become more trusting of their intuition and more attentive to those they trust. Neighbors have become more vigilant about children's safety. Even strangers come up to me on the street and thank me for telling my story publicly. The journalist Carlos Mendez wrote a book about our story, which became a bestseller and has been translated into several languages. All proceeds from the sale of the book go to a fund to help missing children. A film company offered to make a movie based on our story, and we agreed on the condition that the film be used to raise awareness about the problem of child trafficking. The boys have become real celebrities in our city, but I try to keep their lives as normal as possible. They go to a regular school, play with regular children, and have regular childhood problems and joys. Their unusual story should not define their entire lives. Pablo recently told me that he wants to become a doctor to help other children. Manuel says he wants to become a police officer to catch bad people who hurt children. I am proud of their choices and will support any decisions they make. In conclusion, I want to say to all parents, trust your instincts. If something seems wrong to you, it probably is. A mother's heart rarely makes mistakes, even when the mind says otherwise. Fight for your children. Seek the truth. Don't give up in the face of obstacles. And remember, justice sometimes doesn't come immediately, but it always comes. Those who cause pain to children and families sooner or later get what they deserve. Good triumphs over evil. Love is stronger than hate, and family remains the most important value in life. My story began with betrayal and pain, but ended with love and justice. Every day I wake up grateful that my sons are with me, healthy and happy. Every day I thank fate for giving me the strength to fight for the truth. A mother's instinct never fails. Always remember that.